大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello, and welcome to LupinRecap versus PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I am your host, Lokamasi, and with me is my co-host, Fefner Masamune.
You know, I don't think enough people are talking about the fact that a Ganglar is now the head of Nintendo. I mean, like, granted, better disguised than most Ganglars, but come on, Doug Bowser? That's definitely a Ganglar name.
I appreciate your efforts to date our podcast in every single one of these openings.
Well, first off, I can't think of that many personal intros.
It's usually related to Nintendo, oddly enough.
Well, I mean, you didn't like my King Crimson joke.
Fuck, I forget. When did you tell a King Crimson joke?
That's the joke, Loka.
You can't expect me to interpolate a joke from knowing how King Crimson's powers work.
I absolutely can, and I'm disappointed in you. Go to your room.
Like the tweet about this episode, if you think that King Crimson's power makes sense, and retweet if you think it doesn't. Settle this feud. Anyways, we're not talking about King Crimson. We're talking about Lupot. But before we talk about the episode, we're going to try talking about something that's thematically appropriate to the episode, and that is the idea of how media explores helping others. So I'll say the obvious, very rarely will you see media that flat out tells you not to help others. And if you do see it, it was written by Ayn Rand. So you probably shouldn't have read that to begin with, I'm very sorry.
Or it's one of those, like, bad moral choice games where it's like, hey, do you want to save people, or do you want to kick this puppy a lot?
Moral choice where one choice is obviously immoral, which kind of defeats the purpose.
Do you want an excuse to be a dick? Well, here you go. Evil option. Can just be the worst person if you want.
That doesn't mean that, the idea of helping others is necessarily one-sided, because it can be used to create conflict. We're gonna see we have seen examples from Good Striker in the past. Because the fact that he helps both teams is what causes problems. Like, if he only helped one or the other, then 3 people would dislike him. But because he's helping both, 6 people dislike him.
Yep.
Which is unfortunate when you think about it. Another good example, and just how straightforward it is, at the end of Dragon Ball Z, there's a scene where the Earth is about to be destroyed and Goku is trying to find Trunks, Goten, and I think Gohan at that point?
Yeah.
And get them off the Earth so that they don't die. And as he's flying around, he sees 2 other characters, Dende and Mr. Satan, and he grabs them, and then runs out of time. So in his efforts to try to help everyone, he let his children and Vegeta's child die.
Yeah, there's that whole thing about chasing 2 rabbits, and then they both get away. That one's, comes up in a lot of media. Mm-hmm. Conceptually, it's prevalent.
But I think there's this idea that making a character like a goody two-shoes that wants to help everyone makes it harder to create a conflict. And it's like, nah, that's pretty easy to make a conflict around.
Yeah, honestly, like, doing the right thing can be hard at times.
Yeah, we just finished Avatar, and that's, like, pretty much one of the main themes.
Yeah, in order to do the right thing, you have to do a thing that literally no one else can do.
You have to do the impossible.
To not
So impossible that people are still mad that you found a way to make it possible.
To not kill a fascist, you have to defang him thoroughly by removing his ability to do anything.
Alright.
I guess I'll also be on brand and mention Fire Emblem. So in FE12 or 3, or whichever one has Mystery of the Emblem, either version, you have the mostly main villain in Hardin, who is a former comrade of Marth, and throughout the game Marth really wants to save him, except he's been possessed by an orb, so by the time you actually get to Hardin, that's become impossible, and you do have to kill him, because he's done a lot of terrible things by that point. And again, Orb. Orb is very powerful. But at the same time, while you can't save Hardin, the game does throw Martha Bone, and in the end you are able to save, the 4 kidnapped priestesses at the end. Which, again, it can be hard to do the right thing, but also I'm kind of glad the game ends with that instead of Hardin, because it's just kind of nice that after a game that gives you that sort of, I would say, difficult situation, except FE12 isn't like the best written, so Hardin... I mean, I'm not going to get into it too much here, but yeah, it's not the best written thing, but still, I think it's good that it ends with actually being able to save people after that curveball.
I thought you were going to mention Hardin's Knights.
There is also them. Originally, you just straight up had to kill all but one of them.
Yeah, that's why I was going to bring them up, because in the original that wasn't a choice, you had to kill them.
Yeah, and instead, in the sequel, you can rely on the bonds they have with one another, and basically, starting with the one knight you could recruit in the original, just work your way through them. And yeah, they all each have their own way of convincing one another to stop helping Hardin. And it is actually pretty well done. That one I actually like, and I do kind of prefer the version where you can save them.
Yeah. The only thing is that war is in lore called the War of Heroes, and I feel like if it's just Marth and all of his friends versus 5 other people from the last war, that's not really a War of Heroes.
Yeah, well, you kind of fight everyone else, but, they join you pretty easily. Like George?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm standing guard here, but Marth talked to me, so, you know what, this sucks, actually.
Yeah, I feel like if they're going to give it such a grandiose name, they need to kill off more characters.
Yeah.
But I do like that you don't have to. It just makes me kind of want a Fire Emblem that does that.
Yeah.
That would be so fucked up.
Write it a little bit better so that, Hardin isn't as definitely evil.
Or just, make him that evil without the possession.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Just the whole, I went away to college and I came back and all my friends are racist, and now I have to decide, were they always racist, or did they just become more racist while I was gone?
Yeah.
I guess one last thing I kind of want to talk about. I have been on a huge Chibi Robo kick recently. I've been revisiting that game in whatever way I can. And that game's whole premise is helping people, and that creates a lot of conflict because not everyone in the house likes each other.
Yep. You have to save a dysfunctional family.
Yeah, I didn't have anything deep or analytical to say. I just wanted to mention Chibi Robo because it's good. You should play it or watch the long play or something.
Yeah, it's just a little game about a cute little robot that's helping around the house with more than just cleaning.
Also, he's never on fire, like that one tweet you may have seen. That's exclusive to Ziplash. But enough floundering about. Let's get to the actual structured part of this podcast.
So, here we are with episode 18, The Secret of the Collection. Is there actually an alternate title to that one? Because that one seems pretty clear-cut.
The Collection's Secret.
I think I like The Secret of the Collection more, honestly.
I'm telling you, Fefner, one of these comes out sooner than the other, and they refuse to have the same title for these episodes.
Well, we won't have to worry about that for any longer, because this is the last one we'll have to watch with these subs. We open on a nice, peaceful morning. Kaitro's eating sweets, Saki has made tea, and the entire police station shakes as Dodo's goddamn brother is raised from the dead out of nowhere, growing straight through the ceiling and ruining everybody's good vibes. It's gonna be that kind of day.
This rules.
Yep, off to a very strong start.
I'm so glad Adorno's brother got to come back.
So, from a distance, Kairi sees the whole thing happen and is about to call his friends to come help before he hesitates, realizing he's seen a gangler like this before. Big Aniki, meanwhile, is confused as to why he's here, so he kinda just walks out of there. Sango notes that he looks like the gangler they defeated before, but Ichigo doesn't care about the details. It's time to kill a gangler. Good Striker happens to wander in, and he's happy that the Pat Rangers actually want to use him. They activate the Pat Kaiser, and the Pat Kaiser stares down Big Aniki, and the intro plays as they fire off a few shots.
Oh, I was going to say, pretty good opening in terms of, like, reversing the dynamic of this show.
Yeah, we're just... No small fight this time. He big.
Yeah, we always end the episode with the big fight because you gotta make the kids want to watch the whole episode. But starting with the big fight also makes kids want to watch the whole episode.
So, as Pat Kaiser and Big Aniki clash, the latter introduces himself as Anidara, but he's big and I already have my own name for him, so I'm calling him that instead. Sorry. Big Aniki fires some missiles, which miss the Pat Kaiser by a mile. But then Big Aniki activates his safe power, accidentally, I'd like to add, and the missiles change their course and begin homing in on the Pat Kaiser. Good Striker is suddenly worried because he now knows that there's a collection piece in play. Ichigo starts attacking relentlessly, which causes Good Striker to panic further as Big Aniki is damaged to the point of being open for a finisher. But before the Pat Kaiser can put him away for good, Good Striker forces the Kaiser apart and makes his escape. As the Pat Rangers are thrown to the ground, they see the Lupin Rangers' Zords pass by overhead. The cops are, of course, annoyed at the fact that Goody changed sides the moment the thieves came along. Big Aniki is still confused as to what's going on, but he spies Destra and Ghosh standing on a nearby building. The Lupin Kaiser is formed, but to no avail as the thieves find that Big Aniki is no longer there. Goody gives the thieves grief for not arriving sooner, but they're annoyed that he helped the police in the first place. But Goody informs the group that Big Aniki has a collection piece in him, and after they have a moment to gasp, we cut over to the cops. Jim informs the group that the safe they had taken was probably the source of the gangler that just attacked. Naturally, Ghosh is the first person, monster, whatever. The cops think that Ghosh is the cause of this, but Hilltop wonders how she could have snuck in. Jim mentions that the security system didn't detect anything out of place. Now, she teleports, we know that, the cops know that, so the security system would probably have a way to prevent or at least detect teleportation. Otherwise, Jim's confusion here would be a bit strange. But Tsukasa also brings up the important point that Go shouldn't know where the safe was being held in the first place. Kaichiro, in response, wonders if they have a leak.
And everyone looks suspiciously at Sakia. That doesn't happen, but I kind of wish it did.
Sakia, have you been tweeting important police information again?
I was just making fun of Sakia because he's easy to make fun of, but I like the idea that he's just an Instagram profile filled with like pictures of confidential evidence.
Just out here living my best life. Saki, you can clearly see a gangler safe in the background. This ain't about that.
God damn it.
But enough of that, back to hell. Instead of Degranio's mansion, though, we cut to the surrounding forest. As if to answer Kaichiro, Destra declares that Zamiga's information was correct. So we know the ice bastard is involved with a leak, we just don't know how. Big Aniki is thankful for being revived, though Ghosh is just as annoyed that she'd had to be bothered, and mentions to Destra that it will cost him. As she leaves, Destra tells Big Aniki to open a safe, and he does. Destra peers inside, and confirms that it's his collection piece. As long as he has it, his accuracy will improve, and with it, he can avenge his brother. Big Aniki gets hyped and runs off, while Destra heads back to the mansion. Except Ghosh was actually still there, she was just behind a tree. Had to look cool and aloof. And then suddenly, we get a pretty major plot point dropped on us. Destra informs Ghosh that the collection was originally created in the Ganglar world, and the pieces that the humans are able to use were modified by a human. You can probably guess where this is heading by now, but for now we leave Ghosh having a chuckle before we cut back to Jim doing some work. Nobody's seen Big Aniki since he vanished, which is weird because he's quite large. Tsukasa guesses that he may be in another world. got it in one, Sakasa. 360 no-scope that hypothesis. But as we zoom in on Kaichiro's ponderous face, an echoing laugh cuts in, and all the monitors in the station are hijacked to show a ball of black fuzz spinning on screen. Sakia recalls that a dodo had a similar power to this. A Nikidara then appears on the screen and challenges the Pat Rangers to a duel at Mount Tokiori. Sakia is concerned that they don't have good striker, meaning they can't actually fight Big Aniki on his level. But Kaichiro isn't worried. He's prepared to take good striker from the Phantom Thieves. Everyone's a little concerned, except Sakia, who's excited to turn the tables and steal from the Phantom Thieves. Director Hilltop asks how they can pull something like that off, and Kaichiro says that he has an idea.
So this seems a little weird, isn't it?
A little bit.
Like, there's the obvious, like, Asaka stealing from thieves is still stealing. Keiichiro is suggesting this idea.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Like, they basically justify it as, like, hey, he was given to us by headquarters.
They justify it as, like, bringing home an AWOL officer. Like, get back here, you son of a bitch. But it's also weird that, like, they assume he's still with the thieves. That has literally not happened up to this point.
That is a strange assumption.
And it's weird that they would think that he's not going to wander back, as he does every single time.
I mean, last time he wandered off after disassembling the Pat Kaiser, he went with the thieves. Just gonna do it long term now.
It's not like a plot hole or anything, it's just weird.
Yeah. Well, I guess to be fair, they have stolen from the thieves before, because, I mean, like, the thieves did have Biker for an episode or so.
Yeah, well, Good Striker did that.
I mean, having somebody else do it for you is still stealing. Like, if somebody took somebody else's wallet and then gave it to Kaiichiro, Kaiichiro's going to arrest that man on the spot. Doesn't matter if he needed the $20. So, at Jure, Good Striker is booping a hanging basket decoration, and it's adorable. Like, it sounds like he's actually saying boop boop as he taps it. Anyway, the thieves are wondering how to claim Big Aniki's treasure, but Kairi's certain they can just open up the safe and take it as usual. But considering someone that large just disappeared into thin air, finding him is the strangely difficult part. Good Striker says that they'll have to sniff him out. Given none of the Juror trio are exactly happy with Goody at the moment, lazy advice like that doesn't impress them. In fact, Kairi tells Goody to take this seriously. Kairi says that, in an extreme case of the pot calling the Versus Changer black.
I'm surprised that, like, Umika didn't smack Kairi for that.
Goody replies that he does take things seriously, but Kairi asks him why he helps the police if that's the case. He did almost destroy a collection piece, after all. Despite being the one to prevent that one from happening, though, Goody can't manage much of a defense outside of, I had a good feeling about them. Goody then gets angry at Kairi's accusations and leaves, out the front door, which he opens. The Juror trio just look at the open door, and Kogure chimes in by saying even Good Striker has his problems. And everyone jumps once it hits them that Kogure is there. Kogure then goes on to explain that Good Striker is protecting Arsene's best interests. Yeah, that's right, Arsene Lupin! Because Lupin was the one to create Good Striker. Yeah, that's right, in addition to being the one to modify the collection for human use, which Kogure confirms, he is also Good Striker's dad. Being the first collection piece that was modified, Lupin really liked Good Striker, and since Goody could make other collection pieces stronger, he wanted him to protect the collection. And because of that, Good Striker now has free will. Because of his cool dad, the gentleman thief Arsene Lupin.
Yeah, and this is, like, such a weird backstory for him. And I really like it.
God, this episode is honestly so wild. I was hyped for basically the entire thing when we watched it. So Kogure calls Good Striker capricious and troublesome, but that's the burden free will brings with it. Kairi stands up and leaves for a walk. Tuma just smiles and says that nobody here's honest with themselves. Versus changer, Potts. While Kairi is out walking and not doing anything else, definitely not, what are you talking about, Umika and Tuma decide to go search for the Ganglar. And before they leave, Tuma asks Kogure to watch the restaurant. Kogure just kind of sits there, half in shock and holding the apron in front of himself.
It's his restaurant. He owns it.
Honestly, I hadn't realized that until now, but I guess that does make sense as to how 3 teenagers were able to get a restaurant.
I thought they mentioned that.
They
early
might
on,
have.
Kogure financed the restaurant.
I probably missed that then, or forgot about it.
I would like to see him just, alright, time to make the food, and he only knows how to make tea. So it's just like, we order 2 omelets, here's your tea, and then he leaves.
After the Lupin trio came in, there was just a sign on the place that read, "Now serving more than just tea."
I can't believe Kogure is just evil Uncle Iroh.
Hey, now we haven't gotten confirmation that he's evil yet, even if he is incredibly suspicious. On these streets, Umiko wonders where to look for Big Aniki, only to be answered by a news broadcast. An evacuation notice has been declared, what with the upcoming large fight between a giant hell mobster and a cop robot. At Police HQ, the cops confirm that their plan is to lure the Phantom Thieves to Mount Tokiori before they have to fight Big Aniki. Meanwhile, Kairi finds Good Striker at the park, sadly pushing himself on a swing, and oh my god, it's adorable.
This is such a great shot. It's so sad and so goofy at the same time.
Why is Good Striker so cute in this episode?
He's cute in every episode. It's just hard to tell because he's so much of a gremlin.
It's extra now. Even when he's sadly recalling Lupin's request, he is just adorable. Kairi gets on the swing beside him and lets him know that he knows about Lupin's request. Goody figures out quickly that Kogure must have been the one to tell him that. Kairi apologizes for yelling at him, even if Goody does get a good feeling about the police every once in a while. Goody then says that he'll help the Phantom Thieves, and Kairi fist bumps him, or at least as much as you can fist bump a flying toy.
I don't want to, harp on bad special effects, but this fucking fist bump is the worst looking thing.
Yeah.
It looks so bad that it loops around to being funny, so I'm not, upset about it. It's just...
Yeah.
You're too scared to CG that one, huh, guys?
It's goofy in concept, but also accidentally in execution.
I'm surprised you don't see the hands of the person holding the toy.
At Mount
But also, I want to mention how just appropriate I find it that Kairi is the one to bond with Good Striker like this.
Yep.
Because they're both very devil may care.
Yep. Carefree
in their attitudes.
Is the phrase that gets used a lot in this episode. At Mount Tokiori, Big Aniki is complaining that the cops aren't here yet. Tuma wonders why that is, but Kairi, impulsive as always, decides to just go for it. They charge Big Aniki, but he doesn't much care since he doesn't have business with them. The thieves Kaito change, which does catch Big Aniki's attention. But before they can do anything, the drill burrows up behind them, knocking them down the hill. The crane then lowers Ichigo, yelling intensely, down to steal Good Striker from Red. And before the Lupin Rangers can react, Ichigo is successfully pulled back up.
On my way to steal your Good Striker.
And doing so loudly because it's Kaiichiro and he has no chill. Blue realizes that they'd been lured there for that exact purpose, and Yellow gets mad at them for stealing when they're supposed to be the cops. But Big Aniki sees his opportunity to strike now that the police are here, and fires a volley of missiles. Thankfully, he's not Degranio, so it's only a little devastating, and mostly to the Lupin Rangers this time. They still don't de-transform, though. Not quite as powerful as TNT. Ichigo forces Good Striker onto the Versus Changer despite the latter's pleading. The Pat Rangers send out their Zords, which rush by the fallen Lupin Rangers. Red refuses to just allow them to form the Kaiser and sends out his own Zord. And so, as the Pat Kaiser forms, Red slams his vehicle into Ichigo's, knocking it out of the transformation sequence and taking its place. Ichigo falls from the sky shouting, "Why?" as Red emerges in the completed Kaiser, alongside Sango and Nigu. As everyone tries to shout "Complete Pat Kaiser," they realize that something is very wrong here. The two Pat Rangers then attack Red, while outside, Yellow and Blue keep Ichigo from trying to get back to the Kaiser.
So, just a couple of interesting things about the cockpit. With this, you can tell that it is the red vehicle that decides which cockpit forms, because it is in the Lupin Kaiser formation with red at the front.
Mm-hmm.
And this also informs us that Good Striker's outfit is not dependent on the cockpit, and he just chooses on his own.
Yep, because he's in the cop's outfit.
He's still in the cop outfit.
He has to manually get dressed before each fight.
I so wish that he had looked around, seen Lupin Red, and just went down and came back up in the Phantom Thief.
Well, I guess Good Striker is here for the majority vote, because 2/3 of the group is Pat Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
Big Aniki has no idea what's going on at this point, but he's just going to attack the Kaiser anyway. And the half-Kaiser, with 2/3 of its occupants fighting the third, isn't in a position to defend itself. Despite this, Red manages to maneuver the Kaiser well enough with his grapple sword, to do a little bit of defense. We also get a really good line from Red here. Nigu says, "Now get out, thief." Sangu then says, "You're under arrest," and Red just replies, "Pick one!"
I forgot about that line.
It's so good. But, seeing a big attack from Big Aniki heading right for them, they all pick the closest seat and manage to stop fighting for long enough to block it. They celebrate for a moment until they remember to start fighting again.
This fight is so good.
It is the weirdest game of musical chairs. But hey, Sakia gets to be up front for once. Big Aniki stumbles and decides it's missile time, which really interrupts the cockpit fight. Red retaliates by sending out the blade vehicle, which attaches to Big Aniki's safe and enters its combination. 1, 1, 4. But upon checking the inside of the safe, Red realizes that the collection piece did not scale up with Anikidara, and he can't take it with the Kaiser. Not that Sangu and Nigu are going to give him much of a chance. Thankfully, Blue notices that the safe is open and tells Red to leave it to them. Which I guess means they have communicators or something? Because he heard that, and then Red knows that he said that, and manages to get the Kaiser to grapple Big Aniki.
Look, Red just has really good hearing.
Red and Blue have that sibling-like bond where they can just communicate via telepathy, a thing that all twins can do. Blue and Yellow manage to escape their own fight and grapple to Big Aniki's safe. And thankfully, Ichigo's a bad shot today because they're both able to make it up and retrieve the treasure, le coup de chance. The two of them make their escape in the Blade and Cyclone, which means Red can eject both Sango and Nigu without making himself defenseless. And by eject, I mean the Half-Kaiser's current arms are fired directly at Big Aniki, which unfortunately does not kill him instantly. But that means they can finish the fight with the Lupin Cyclone Knight, and Goody can use his thief attire.
I can't decide if this is the world's greatest or the world's shittiest rocket punch.
I mean, it's not effective if that's the grade system you're going with.
And you can only do it once.
I mean, not unless you want your friends to hate you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now in sync, the Lupin Kaiser kicks Big Aniki's ass. And without the collection piece, those missiles that were formerly a threat miss completely. Lupin Kaiser literally does not dodge. It just walks forward with its shield up and doesn't even need that. All of the missiles miss. So the Lupin Kaiser uses the Good Striker shootout flash and Big Aniki dies. Little bit anticlimactic. With the battle finished, the Lupin Kaiser separates and everyone goes home. Except the Pat Rangers, they're just left watching. And we get a "Damn you, Phantom Thieves!" from Ichigo. Haven't heard that one in a while. I was worried Keiichiro may have lost that white-hot rage of his. Oh, and Destra's also there in the background, looking menacing, but perhaps a little disappointed. Most importantly, though, he doesn't fight the Pat Rangers today. They probably would have died if he had tried. Back in Hell, Gosha's wondering why Destra would waste a collection piece like that. But, as always, Negranio figures Destra had his reasons, and it's too intriguing to be mad at. We also find out that the Ganglars must be dying because there are just so many candles on that table. Please, a Ganglar who is good at math, or finance.
It took me a second to realize what joke you were going for.
Chocomen, $10. Wine, $50. Candles, $30,000.
Someone who's good at the economy, please help. Pinguino shows up. I'm good at the economy, not fucking you.
But enough about that. We return to the Juror trio, who are finally in a good mood. Goody is happy that both groups want him so badly, and Umika asks if he's not going to stop helping the police. Goody isn't entirely sure, and fucks off before anyone else can complain. Tuma knows full well that he'll help the police again, and Umika's a little annoyed. Kairi, though, is fine with Goody doing what he wants. Even if he is a collection piece, his nature is what makes him like a human. It's a sweet way to end the episode. You just see Good Striker flying off, and it's nice, and Kairi's actually sympathizing with someone.
Alright, and that is the episode. Pretty good episode.
Yep. Like, man.
I think last episode you said I wasn't looking forward to this one, and that's a fair interpretation of how I was acting, but it's not because of the episode itself.
Oh yeah, definitely not. that one rules.
Yeah, a lot of fans will insist that the Pat Rangers treat Goody as more like an object and less like a person, and that is entirely because of the plan they hatch in this episode.
I mean, I guess...
Because even earlier in the episode, like Keiichiro says, "Oh, Good Striker, you're here, I'm glad to have your help." Which isn't how you talk to an object.
Like, part of the thing is, though, that, like, you know, I think it's understandable that Keiichiro would depend, or, like, focus a little more on the, he's one of the collection pieces angle of it, because, like, the Pat Rangers don't really get to know Goody. Like, even if they know he is a living collection piece and he has a personality, typically, like, even in the past, I think, Keiichiro's kind of not really cared about what Goody has to say. Because I'm pretty sure I've seen him tell Goody to shut up before. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less harsh than that, but, like, he's a lot shorter with Goody than the Lupin Rangers are. Which they'll be annoyed with Good Striker a lot, of course, but, like, Good Striker has actually hung around them, and they've talked. And especially after this episode, there's a bit more of an understanding with them, whereas Good Striker really only interacts with the Pat Rangers when he wanders in.
Yeah, that is sort of unfortunate just about the show in general. I wish Good Striker had more of a rapport with both teams.
I feel like after this would be a sort of a good point to start bringing in a relationship between him and the Pat Rangers.
Yeah, because he's already formed a pretty deep bond with Kairi because they swung at that swing set together.
Yep.
Shared the world's shittiest fist bump.
Together they could, I don't know, maybe show the Earth a few things. if you're feeling up for it.
But the good parts of this episode, well, there are too many good parts to really talk about, aren't there?
God.
But the parts probably worth talking about is we get some more characterization for Good Striker.
Yep.
Did you think we were ever going to get characterization for Good Striker?
I figured it would happen at some point.
I didn't, because I sort of just bought into the whole, like, alright, he's here to facilitate the conflict between the Pat Rangers and the Lupin Rangers by choosing sides a little arbitrarily.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect we were going to get, like, a flashback and him, like, remembering Lupin's words in his head.
God.
He's given just a really sad motivation, wanting to make his dad proud.
And
but
God.
not in, like, an obsessive way.
Alright, we'll have to go to the Ganglar in just a sec, but just, God, like, there's been a whole lot of lead up to this moment, which is sort of dropped, I wouldn't say unceremoniously, because it's still a big thing. I just didn't think it would be in this episode, where they would finally reveal, like, the secret of the collection well, actually, to be fair, that's literally the title of the episode, now that I think about it. In fairness, from the preview from the previous episode, I thought it would just be a goofy episode where they fought, or, like, they fought over Good Striker. And also,
Yeah.
I forget if I noticed the title of the episode when we first watched it. I don't think I took it into account enough, though, to realize that we'd finally be getting the answer to Destra's sort of questioning throughout the series thus far.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just everything they drop in this episode is so wild. Like the fact that Lupin was the one to modify the collection. Like, I figured it would kind of change over time. I didn't consider the fact that, like, no, this is originally from the Ganglar world. But, of course, it makes sense. Arsene's a thief, so, of course, he stole them. It's just, they originally were part of the Ganglar world. That's where he stole them from.
I also like you mentioning, he stole these things that let him turn into a ranger. Isn't that goofy? Oh no, he stole them in one form, but then changed them into the form that let him change into a ranger.
Weird.
This isn't even like he randomly found it. He found something else and thought, I'm gonna change this to something I'll actually use.
Yep. Though it's really weird that he also made cop versions.
It's weird that he made planes that wouldn't exist for, like, years after his time. I don't know exactly when Lupin was around, but it's like, it's pre-plane, right? It's definitely pre-VTOL.
Yeah. And I don't think he would have really known what a car is either. Or at least ones like the Pat Rangers have.
Yeah.
But given he's a thief, the thieves make sense. That motif I get, but why the cops? Here's the ranger that will specifically hunt me.
I don't know.
Did he just acknowledge that, like, hey, wait a minute, the Ganglars probably hate the police, so I'll make this second team, and they'll be the scapegoat team. The Ganglars will really want to murder these three.
He's worried the Ganglars will get those pieces of the collection back, so he changes them to be cop themed so they won't want it anymore.
But yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I forgot to talk about the Ganglar because, well, we've already kind of seen this one before, haven't we?
We sort of have and we sort of haven't. Oh god, I didn't predict this because I'm pretty sure I specifically said at, like, one point, like, that he was dead, or at least implied that he was dead forever. And also that, like, it was good that he didn't have a collection piece since he already lost his, or something like that. And I was wrong on that account, because he
had
got
the crane.
one. Yeah,
he was
had
holding the crane out, and then it was crushed into the mountain along with him.
And then I figured he wouldn't have a collection piece ever again.
Right, but Ghosh and Dexter broke into police HQ. Dexter shoved his collection piece into the safe, and then Ghosh brought it back to life.
Yep. So yeah, also you brought up the really good point that both of the Crash brothers try to avenge one another.
By fighting the police.
Yes, because first Aniki died being crushed by the cops, so Dodo wanted to go fight the police for him. And then Dodo was permanently killed by the cops, so then when Aniki was brought back, he had to eventually avenge his brother. I do love, though, the fact that, like, most of the episode he has no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He just wakes up in police HQ and leaves until he realizes he needs to avenge his brother. And then the whole thing with Red taking over the Kaiser happens, and he continues being confused.
I also just like the idea of, alright, so Ghosh brings back a Ganglar, and it manages to defeat the Kaiser. What happens now? Now they're just giant for the rest of their life. How's that gonna work?
Yeah, he can't even go into the mansion in this episode. He has to hang out in the forest. Will they have to make a bigger mansion if they eventually becomes the successor?
That would be great.
But yeah,
Yeah, not much else to talk about the Ganglar. I guess I can mention this cockpit fight was a really good fight.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
So I think I said this multiple times when we watched the episode, but fights in the cockpit are not new to Sentai. There's actually one in the first season of Power Rangers. I guess that means it was in Z Ranger too. Because the Green Power Ranger starts as evil, and because he's a ranger, he can get into the cockpit, and then he just beats everyone up and leaves.
Yeah.
So yeah, this isn't even the first fight between Rangers, but it's the first fight to be like between Rangers who are also fighting a bad guy.
Yeah.
The idea of like, we have to kick each other's ass while working together to make sure we don't get our own asses kicked, pretty good.
Yep. And just, as always, the choreography is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an interesting fight, and I just love how they work with just such a small amount of space.
And if I remember right, this version of the Lupin Kaiser is called the the incorrect Lupin Kaiser. Or like wrong Lupin Kaiser.
They fricked it.
Also, the fight doesn't really focus on Keiichiro fighting Blue and Yellow, but I like to think that he was winning for the most part.
I mean, yeah, like, he was still standing by the time they had to leave, so while they did successfully distract him, he held his own.
I mainly just want to offset Red being able to hold his own against two Power Rangers. It would make sense for Ichigo to be able to hold off two Lupin Rangers.
Yeah. Though also, as we've established before, Red's probably the best in a straight-up fight.
Yeah. Somehow, he is the best fighter. If I looked at these 6 actors, Asahi Ito, Kairi's actor, is the one that I would probably think I could take in a fight.
I mean, obviously Saki would be the top of that list.
Yeah, probably. It might be a toss-up between Asahi and Ryo. I'm trying to use the actors' names more often so I memorize them.
But yeah, Red's good in a fight, manages to hold off. Though, to be fair, Sango and Nigo actually do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
Yeah, he
Red's
doesn't win,
limber.
like, handily.
He doesn't win handily. Honestly, he probably wins, or not even wins necessarily, until he ejects them. Like, he's kind of in a stalemate, but, like, to be fair, a lot of the reason he is able to stay in the Kaiser is mostly because of his cool tricks that he can do. It's not as much brute force.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, the Lupin Rangers, pretty good at acrobatics.
Oh, yeah.
And given the little amount of space in the cockpit, then yeah, that actually kind of makes sense as to why Red was doing well. And also, I'd have to rewatch the scene. We don't see a lot of Ichigo fighting the 2 Lupin Rangers, but I feel like he did actually, like, managed to hold his own more from brute force in that situation, because I remember him, like, forcing a shot away from either blue or yellow, I think? Or probably blue. But yeah, like, they kind of play to their own strengths pretty well in that fight. So, prediction-wise, unless you
Hey,
have
one
anything...
came true. You were right.
So, now we have... Let's see. So, we have the fact that there's a leak in the police HQ, which... Considering Zamigo is involved with it somehow, I'm starting to think that that thing you mentioned a while back with Zamigo being, like, well, have we firmly established that that Zamigo's, like, the disguise person? I think we have, right?
Yes, Peggy
Okay.
went to mention getting his human disguise from Zamigo.
So I think that then means that, like, they managed to find someone not suspicious, which is weird, because I'm pretty sure that's how they broke into Police HQ. Because if the security didn't pick up anything, they probably had disguises. But there's the other part of that you mentioned when you were watching through the first time, where, like, the disguises might be based on people that Zamigos killed? Which, I don't know. The police do have a weird lack of information on people who have died, but also, I feel like if anybody died at Police HQ, then they would know, and thus that couldn't be used as a disguise. But, yeah.
It is a mystery.
Yeah, I had that thought when watching this through again, so Zamigo's involved there. Thought I had something else, but I think it's just general Kogure being kind of suspicious. So now we know a little more about, like, Lupin's end of things. You know, he stole the collection. Yeah. So then, what's Kogure's deal in all this?
Here's also, a better question. Why is it called the Lupin collection if he only stole it?
Because he made it his. Finders keepers. He modified a few of the treasures so it's his now. Eat it, Ganglars.
So your name on it, in fact, he just stamps Lupin on one of the random items. Has my name on it, looks like. Give us back our Ganglar collection. Oh, I'm sorry, you mean the Lupin collection?
So yeah.
I desperately need to see Lupin telling Tigranio to kiss his ass.
And after that, I hated humans. But yeah, then, what's Kogure's deal? Because if the Ganglar stole the collection back, then we have that. But if Kogure knows the collection so well, then why does it seem like he doesn't know everything? Or why is he withholding information? Because we still have that moment where we found out what Gauche's power vaguely what we find out what the collection item looked like, and he seemed like he knew something, or was withholding information, or was surprised, something like that. No matter what, it's suspicious.
I'm gonna be honest, it's hard for me to keep track of all the times Kogure is suspicious.
That could be any time.
If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, we are at LRVSPR. Fafnir is at Fafnir Masamune. If you'd like to send us an email, you can email us at LupinRecap@PatReview@gmail.com. And we will see you in the next episode.
Adieu.